Welcome back to Snippets with Patterns by Jen. This week our tutorial is going to be on pillowcases, but also adding a little personal touch to those pillowcases. So whether you're gifting it to your child, your grandchild, your nieces, your nephews, your friends, whoever, they will know that you thought of them personally because of this special touch. So we have a few things. We have our large piece. This is our main pillowcase piece. My favorite thing to use is a flannel. I have always found that the cotton can be a little stiff, a little harsh to sleep on, so I love to use for my main large piece a piece of flannel. And then, so this piece is going to be 27, I have it at 27 by 41 because that was the width of my fabric. Because I'm using flannel, it's a little bit smaller. You can definitely go the 27 by width of fabric, so 42 inches, 40 inches, however you want to use that, you can do that now. If you want to do width of fabric, you will probably have to trim at when we get to the point, and I will let you know when you could trim, but you might need to trim because rarely do fabrics all end at the same width amount, even when they say they do. So mine right now goes to 41 inches. So that's my main. It's a nice, sweet, soft flannel. And then I have the cuff, and I've cut my cuff at 11 inches by 41. I went with 11 because this is just such a sweet print that I wanted as much of it to show as possible. And now it's 11 inches, and then I have already folded it in half and given it a good press. So it's just folded in half and pressed to give us that nice crease. And then we have our little accent piece. This is 2 inches by 41 inches. Again, this is all going to be, they're all going to want to end the same width length. So right now I'm doing 41 inches. You can do with a fabric and trim later. So we just want to make sure that we are aware when we are cutting our pieces that in the end they all have to be equal when we're done sewing. Now this is the piece that we are going to personalize. So for my machine I have a Baby Lock Brilliant, and I'm going to use the alphabet on the machine that I have. So I practiced many times on the same piece of fabric that I am using for the pillowcase, and I can't emphasize this enough how important it is to do this. As you can see, I tried many different ways to try and get my lettering correct, right? So I tried it with batting to see if that would make a difference, because without, it was not pretty. I did it, now I was trying the cursive part of the specialty stitches that are on my machine. And so I tried doubling or using it folded, a little better, still not beautiful. And then you also get the mess on the back, which I don't want. And then I tried, so now we're switching it over to this side. So I tried it again with just a regular alphabet, capitalized alphabet, better, right? But still kind of messy on the other side. I really don't want that on the other side. So then we went with a piece of SF101 interfacing. Now it's a pretty light interfacing. You could go a little heavier if you wanted to. Again, use the fabric that you're going to use for your pillowcase. Use the thread you're going to use the alphabet that you're going to use, or practice until you find the alphabet you're going to use, and work with that until you find what's going to look pretty. You don't want to mess up this part, especially if you don't have a lot of extra fabric, right? So the winner was the one with the SF101. So for this, our band is cut at 2 inches, and we need to fold it in half when we sew it, which means this is going to be a 1-inch piece. So I have you cut your interfacing at 3/4 of an inch. Now the length of it is going to depend on what you are having stitched out. Another good reason to have this stitched out. I could go here and measure it and see that it comes out at 6 inches. So then I cut it an inch longer. I cut the interfacing an inch longer so that it would, I didn't on this one. This was the practice piece to make sure it was going to look okay, but I cut it an inch longer. So my piece is cut at 7 inches because my personalization stitches out at 6 inches. So my piece is cut at 7 inches. So our first step in personalizing this pillowcase is going to start with our little accent piece, our little 2-inch strip. We're going to fold this in half and lengthwise and give it a good press. So let's do that quickly. So to do this, we're going to fold it in half, and we don't want to iron this strip, right? We want to press it. So my tip for doing that is going ahead, folding it in half, and then finger pressing all the way down as far as you can. Now, if I had this over at my ironing board, I would have it stretched out and I would finger press the whole thing. But I have my little wool mat over here on my cutting mat so that I don't have to move my recording system any more than I have to, because let me tell you, it's quite the setup right now. So I don't want to have to move that around. So I'm going to just do this piece first. So I finger pressed, so it's going to stay pretty nicely. I know it's in half. I'm just going to come and press straight down and all the way to where I have it finger pressed. All right. And go all the way down with this. And then our next step is going to be applying the SF101 interfacing. We will do that once this is all done. Now, when you are planning your little personalization, do keep in mind that where you're going to put this. So I'm going to show you my measurements, but depending on how long you're going to have it, where is it going to land on your pillowcase? Are you going to want it centered? Are you going to want it off to the side? Is it going to wrap all the way around? All of that kind of makes a difference on how we're putting this together. So get this done. All right. So take your pretty fabric and envision the pillowcase right now, okay? We're not stitching anything. We aren't doing anything with this right now. We're just envisioning our pillow. So here is our cuff. Our accent is going to be right under here. It's going to be sticking out a little bit, right? And I have mine planned to, let me grab my ruler. I like to plan for about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're using a 1/4 inch, we're doing whatever, okay? We'll get to that part. I like to envision at least a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance. And then I want to give myself how many inches off of that. So if I'm envisioning a 1/2 inch of a seam allowance, that means this is my starting of my workspace. And I'm going to have my strip here. Now, do I want to be that close to the end with my little message? I don't know that I do. So I'm probably going to go about 3 inches, 3.5, probably 3.5, because that's going to give me actually 3 inches, right? So I'm going to go about 3.5 inches from the end. This is where my message is going to be. So then when you think about it, it's going to be off to the side a little bit, not directly centered. If I can not do direct center, I'm going to do that, because otherwise I get too perfectionistic and I need to have it exactly centered. I'm wasting way too much time trying to make that exact, right? So off to the side, it's planned, it looks planned, then it looks pretty. All right. So our next step, we have decided where we're going to have our message be. Now here's the tricky part. You want to remember that when we are stitching this, our words need to be coming this way. So we're going to read it right here, right? Not upside down. Going to be stitched right here. But we need to open this up, and our interfacing needs to then be on this piece of fabric, right? Because this is where we're going to do our stitching. So we are going to put it here. Make sure you have the glue down. I say to myself, we're going to put it here, and I want you to, when you are doing this, I want you to get as close to that folded, pressed, creased line, whatever you want to call it. I want you as close to it as possible without going right up next to it. We want to be able to press this without it moving and getting over that crease, but we also want to be able to then fold this over and have it a nice closing without getting kind of weirdly lumpy in the crease, right? So you're going to take that piece and you are going to put it almost right up to that folded line, but not completely, okay? And we're going to keep that in mind when we are doing this stitching. Now, I'm going to double check that I am about 3.5 inches or so away from the edge. Ooh, even further, so I can move this over. Follow the instructions on your SF 101. Do not do it as I do, as I probably am not doing it correctly. I am going to go ahead and just press this in right now, making sure the glue side is down, and we're just going to hold it there for a minute. So we're pressing this on. We're going to take this to the machine. You'll have to look in your manual, follow your machine's directions for doing the alphabet and how to put that in and put it into your machine and get your words set. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch, and we're just going to stitch, and I'll bring you over to the machine with me. We're just going to stitch on this one side. We aren't going to do anything with this side because we want to be able to fold this up and hide that back stitch. Okay, so let's go to the machine. Let's get our little personalized message put onto our accent. Okay, so I have my strip with my SF 101 interfacing already pressed on, and we are going to go ahead and start stitching. Now, I have my little saying already put into my Baby Lock Brilliant, and it's going to stitch out Sweet Dreams, Dear One. And I want to start, I've given myself a little bit. Remember, I cut this out at 7 inches, even though my it starts at 6 inches. So I'm going to start a little bit in. And then remember, when you are doing this, our crease, this is going to be what is away from the cuff and towards the larger piece of our pillowcase. So we want our wording, we want to be able to read it so it's this way and we're reading it that way. So that's why I have that pressed again, to make sure I have a nice crease that I can follow with my presser foot to keep my stitching straight. I'm going to find my end here. I'm going to come in just a little bit. And then, because we have that 1/4 inch seam allowance that we need to keep in mind here, I'm going to bring my presser foot and I'm going to sew and keep that folded press crease along the edge of my presser foot, so I know that I have plenty of space up here for my seam allowance. Okay, and we will just let the machine stitch this out. Now, follow the instructions with your machine if you are doing this with a different machine, but just let the machine pull this fabric through. You don't want to pull it on either end. I'm just making sure that this crease is staying right alongside the edge of my presser foot there, so that my stitching, I know, is going to be straight, and we're just going to let it do its thing. Okay. And now we have our added little touch for our pillowcase. So I'll go with the Baby Lock. These are all already
locked down, so I can go ahead and just clip those little stitches that are in between the letters, and we are good to go. So because I have the interfacing, I didn't have to have the stitching on the outside at all. And I'm going to add this to my pillowcase, and it will just add a sweet little touch. Okay, let's go add this to our pillowcase now.
Okay, so now that we have this stitched on so nicely, I'm going to come in. Again, it depends on what your machine does, but I'm going to come in and take out these little extra stitches here. Just quick clip. And I think I actually, well, I'll probably take the E. I think I'll come in. I actually think I'm going to grab my seam ripper and do this. So because these are so little, these little extra stitches in between, very carefully, very slowly, I'm going to take these. Now I could have widened the space between the letters, and that would have probably helped me with some of these extra little stitches, but I did not. So we're gonna go ahead and take these out. Once these are out, then I'm going to give it another good little press just to make sure we're all nice and straight. And then we get to go ahead and put our pillowcase pieces together. And we are going to do this so that we have what's called a French seam, and that's going to enclose all of our seams really nicely and make this just such a nice finish for these pillowcases. So I'm going to go ahead and finish with these stitches, and then we will keep moving forward on these pillowcases. Okay, we have that done. So our next part then is to now put our pillowcase together. We're going to start with the cuff. Now, if you are using a directional fabric, this is important. You want the direction of your fabric going away from you. So if you look at the animals, so here I'm standing here, here are my animals, their feet are pointing away from me, right? So you want the direction of your fabric going away from you, because then it's when we'll just go over this quick. So when this is folded and it's on our pillow, we want this, here's the end of it. We want the deer or the animals or whatever, we want them coming out this way, away from your head, not towards your head, okay? So we're going to make sure, if we're using directional fabric, that it is going away from where we are right now. Now you're going to take your personalized piece. We are going to match it raw sides together, but we want our personalized part right sides together, okay? So here we have our piece. We're going to flip it so our raw edges are together, but we cannot see that personalized piece, because then again, when we're flipping it out, it's going to be the correct way. And because I've cut these all the same length, we're going to match them up edge to edge. Do not, because if you had done it with the fabric, then maybe they wouldn't match up correctly or exactly, and you don't have to worry about it, but mine do. I've cut them all at 41 inches, so I want to make sure that they are going to be, the edges are coming together perfectly. So we'll go ahead and pin all of these. You don't need too many pins on this right now. I started to put too many in. I just want to, like I said, make sure that I have this matched up on the ends correctly. I'm just going to put a couple of them in here. All right, then the next step to the pillowcase is adding the body. Now again, if you have a directional fabric, you're gonna wanna just take a minute to make sure you line this up correctly. So for me, my preference, if I had a directional fabric on my main piece, I would want that coming this way or going probably this way, because this would be towards the bottom. Just thinking like where the seam lines would be. That would be my preference. So just take a minute to look at it and kind of envision where your pillowcase is going to be and what direction you want those to go. Mine is not directional, so I'm going to go ahead. We're going to take this, we're going to flip it. So right now, our body and our cuff will be right sides together. So I'm going to flip that over. And we're going to go ahead and pin this a little bit, just a few places again, because we are going to, and I'll show you in a second, we're going to roll this up and make it all match. Now, when you take this to your machine and you're going to be sewing this, you're going to want to make sure that these raw edges are all going to match up while you're sewing, and we'll go over that a little bit more as I'm at the machine with you. But for right now, I'm just going to stick a few pins in just to make sure that this is laid out equally. Because the next step then is to actually roll up your body of your pillow. So we're going to take the body and just roll it, not tight because you don't want to bend it, but you do want kind of a smaller little roll here. And as we roll it up, probably stop right about here. And then we're going to take our cuff piece and we're going to fold it over and bring it up to that raw edge. And now this is where we're going to clip and keep it together like this. So you want to make sure as you are clipping this, and then once again as you are at the machine, that as you're sewing, you don't catch the body of your pillow. You don't want to catch that in this seam as you sew. So when you are sewing, just make sure that you can tell that the body of your pillowcase is over here away from your seam and you're not catching it. And then you'll also, again, you can take the time you need at the cutting mat or wherever you're putting this together. You can take the time to make sure your raw edges are all together now. I'm going to wait till I get to the machine. I have them all pretty close together, but I'm going to wait till I get to the machine to go ahead and make sure the raw edges are all really nicely lined up together. But we'll keep them all together right now with the pins and the clips until we get over there. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. We'll come back and we will unroll the roll of our pillowcase. Okay, so let's sew this first seam on our pillowcase. And I'm going to give you the best piece of advice I can give you for any sewing whatsoever. And that is, if your sewing machine, once you've sewn a lot, you'll start to really understand your sewing machine. You will, understand, you'll hear things that you'll just know how she's supposed to run and how they're supposed to sound, right? So if you hear that there's something funky going on, it maybe doesn't sound like it's running exactly like it usually does, my best piece of advice is to stop sewing immediately and check. And do not sew the entire pillowcase casing, telling yourself that it's fine, you'll check it when it's over, because you will end up ripping out every stitch that you have just sewn. So If you hear your machine sounding just a little bit different, go ahead, stop what you're doing, and check to find out. In my case, the bobbin was not in correctly or something happened, I don't know, but the bobbin thread was a mess and the whole back side was a mess. So had I just stopped when I heard that it was sounding funky, I would have had to have ripped out the entire 41 inches of stitching. So don't be like Jen is my best advice. Don't be like Jen. All right, so we are gonna finish sewing this up. I did take the opportunity to pin this a little better. I kind of went haphazard at the cutting mat and used clips. And as I was sewing, I really didn't like how much more time it took for me to get it, you know, the raw edges lined up. And so I did some more pinning this time around and to get it to line up a little better, make it a little better or a little faster in the stitching area. And I have my fabric is a little loose because I did have to rip out, oh, so many stitches. And so I am having to play with it a little bit here as I get to the end. I'm actually going to leave that last pin in and walk over it carefully because I don't want my edges to get a little crazy. So I'm going to go over. Now I'll take that up. Alrighty. So now we can go to the cutting mat and pull this out and see what our pillowcase looks like at this step. All right, so we have our long tube and now we just need to pull that fabric out, and it's gonna seem really weird and you're gonna think, am I even doing this right? Is this how this is supposed to go? And yes, it is. Just take your time, pull the fabric through, and it will work out, I promise you. It just takes a minute. So we will, once we get this pulled out, then we're going to give it a really nice press and get those crisp edges back on our cuff and get that accent piece pressed down nicely. And then we have a couple of seams left yet. And the first step is going to be a little bit different. If you are new and just beginning, you know we sew all things right sides together, but we're not going to do that for this next step. So don't let that throw you. Just trust me on this, and I'll get it figured out for you. But we are going to do we're going to do wrong sides together for this next step. But first, let's get this pulled out. All right, there we go. And here we have the start of our pillowcase. And oh my goodness, I love that little Sweet Dreams Dear One. So we've sewn this, and here our cuff is all nice on this side of it, that those seams are sewn in, so we don't have to worry about threads or anything like that. But I'm going to grab my wool mat and we're going to give this a good press. All right, so I just want to come with my hot iron and give this seam right here a really good press so it's nice and crisp. But this seam is going to be really important when we're putting this together. We want those to match up. That's going to give us our nice looking pillowcase. So I want that seam right here to be really nice and crisp. So we're going to do this one first. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the top of the cuff as well. Let's go ahead and pull this out. Oh, this is so precious. if I do say so myself. I love pulling fabrics for pillowcases. Okay. All right, so our next step is going to be taking our pillowcase and we're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together. So this is gonna be, like I said, a little bit different. And if you are starting out and you're new to this sewing and quilting world, you know that we usually sew right sides together first. But you have to trust me on this one. It'll work out, I promise. We are sewing wrong sides together. All right, we're gonna come here and I'm actually going to trim these threads quick. Okay, we're gonna come in and first match up the accent piece right here. So I'm going to take this seam right here and line that up really nicely. And I'm going to put a pin right there. So I have it so that the seams are lined up. And then I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to go down on the right. I'm going to come up on the left of that seam, and I go over this in a 2-minute tips with PBJ episode, and I will link that below. It's so important to pin correctly to get these seams to match up well, and this how I pin is one of the, and I show you how I do that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pin this as well. All right, because I want these two, the cuff, the top of the cuff and the accent piece, I want those to match up, the seams to match up really nicely. Now the rest of this I'm going to take and I'm just going to use the clips. And we're just going to clip it up nice to keep it even and together so we know as we're sewing that we are matched up. And we're going to go ahead, do the long side, get those raw edges together. And then we're also going to do the bottom. And we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way around from the top down that side and then along the bottom here. And then we're going to do what is called a French seam. And that's why we're starting off with this wrong sides together instead of right sides together. So we're going to take this to the machine. We're going to sew 1/4 of an inch from the top all the way down the side, all the way down the side, and then down along the bottom. All right, we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch, and we're going to start at the top so that this our cuff and our accent piece match really well. Now, what I like to do, because we need to back stitch up here anyway, I like to start down a little bit, because that way, if I start down here and then I back stitch and come back, the little threads that I have to trim off, and I'll do this at the beginning, I'll do this when we do the French seams, I'll do the same thing. I'll start down here and then I'll back stitch up and then I'll come down. That way the threads that I need to trim are down here and they won't accidentally poke up out there, up at the top. I just feel like it gives it a cleaner finish. So I'm going to take that thread out of the way. So I'll start down a little bit, not very far, just a little ways. And take a couple, and I'm going to back all the way to the top. And now we sew. Now, as you get to this seam, it is going to be very, very thick. So you're going to slow down
And you are just going to go very carefully so that you don't get caught on that seam. And go one more stitch and then pull that pin. By pinning the way I just showed you, you get to pull that pin before you have to go over it with your machine, so you don't accidentally hit it with your needle, and you're not breaking needles or bending pins or throwing off your timing. So again, I'll link that little tip video down in the description for you. All right, we're going to sew 1/4 inch. What I love about the baby lock 1/4 inch foot is that it has a little mark right there to show you that's where your 1/4 inch line is, and you can stop and pivot right there. So we'll continue on to the end then of this bottom part of our pillowcase. And then we have one more seam after this, our French seam, and our pillowcase is done. All right, do a little back stitch. Okay. Now let's go set up for our French seam. Okay, so we are done with that seam. We're going to clip the one at the top here, and check that. I want you to also just this one corner, clip that corner. Okay, just the one. And then we are going to flip this wrong side out. So pull that out. We want to pop those corners out. And just take a second to get that popped out there on both sides. Okay. And then we want to just kind of go back and forth with your fingers along the seam to get that to kind of lay nice and flat. That seam should be right in the middle, and to do that sometimes you have to go back and forth with your fingers and get it to lay flat like that. You can just kind of go along, rub that fabric back along itself as you go along, and a little harder up at the top here where we have all of that fabric. We want to just make sure we get that centered here. And then we're going to come along with the hot iron and give it a press. Go along the side, and then also this bottom seam, you can see how it kind of rolls up on itself. So we want to make sure before we press that we are getting that set up so that seam is in the middle. If we press it before that, then we get a seam that is maybe too far to one side, and then when we are doing our French seam, that can cause some issues. So we want to make sure we're setting ourselves up to succeed with this next step. All right, so we have that. I'm going to start with this side because I can tell it just really wants to curl up on itself. So I'm going to take my iron and just hit it straight down. Do not go back and forth and push the fabric around. Just going straight up and down. Okay. And we don't need much. Doesn't need to sit on there very long. We just need enough to set this where we want it. And then we're going to go to the machine. We're going to sew about a 3/8 inch
seam. We want just a little bit more than a 1/4 inch because we want to encase that 1/4 inch seam that we've just sewn. We want to encase that within the seam that we're doing right now. So it needs to be just a little bit over that 1/4 of an inch. So about 3/8 of an inch. All right, and now to get this thicker part, again, just making sure that that seam is in the middle before I hit it with the iron. You can see that bottom wants to kind of come out and be on top, but we want it right in the middle. All right, hit that, and then we're going to go ahead and take this to the sewing machine and do our final seam. All right, so again, I'm going to start just a little bit down from the top, give myself a couple stitches here to get started, and then I'm going to back stitch all the way up to the top. I started down a little too far, but that's all right. Well, it'll work. All right, and then we'll go. So now when I come back and I clip those threads, I won't get any little threads. So I just like how it finishes better. All right, now this is the really thick part, so we'll want to help it go over. There we go. Keep going, little guy, you got this. There we go. All right, and now we're on our way. And you can feel as you go along, just feel to make sure that your seam allowance is going to be where, inside of where this new seam is going to be. So you don't want it to show on the other side, because then there will be some picking that you'll need to do. All right, we're going to back stitch. And our pillowcase is done. Let's take it to the larger area and take a look at that. So I'm just going to quick clip these while I'm sitting here and clip this one. Oops, up here. So you can see now I'm going to clip this, and even if I clipped it long, it would not hang over the edge. I have a nice finished edge there. And clip this one back here too. All right, let's go flip this out and see what it looks like. Okay, let's take a look at this pillowcase that we have made and personalized, and can imagine somebody sleeping peacefully on. Oh, I love the feel of this flannel, not gonna lie. I really think encourage you to try using flannel for that main body part. Here and get this. All right. And I have a couple threads sticking out here I need to take care of. Now you definitely can go ahead and give this a press if you want. I always wait and give it a press after I wash, because I always wash a pillowcase before I gift it, because I want it to be clean and make sure I have all of those chemicals out, but I also want to make sure that none of the stitching comes out and I'm not gifting them something that's going to fall apart. I still don't trust myself enough yet as a stitcher to do that, so I wash every gift before I give it to them. So that is our tutorial for the week. I will see you again in 2 weeks for another Snippets with Patterns by Jen. Go make something you love.